Victor Hale had built his reputation on precision. Not brilliance, not charm, not even vision, precision. He noticed when a chair was angled a few degrees away from the desk, when the hum of the air conditioner shifted pitch, when a spreadsheet contained a number that was technically correct but emotionally wrong. His company had grown because of that attention to detail, because he trusted patterns more than people. Patterns did not lie. People did. That was why the first irregularity unsettled him so deeply. It was a trivial thing, almost laughable. A thin blue folder on the left side of his desk, marked Q4 projections, sat at a slightly different angle than he remembered. Victor paused before sitting down, eyes narrowing. He had locked his office the night before. He always did. The cleaning crew was not allowed inside unless supervised, a rule he himself had written into company policy. He straightened the folder, then stopped. The top page was correct, but the order beneath it felt off. Not wrong, exactly, just different, as if someone had flipped through it carefully and put it back with too much confidence. He spent the rest of the morning distracted, answering questions half a second too late, rereading emails he normally skimmed once. By noon, he dismissed the thought. Stress, he told himself. Expansion talks, pressure from investors, too many late nights. Paranoia was a luxury for men with nothing to lose. But the next evening, it happened again. This time it was a paperclip. Victor had a habit, an obsessive one, of keeping a single black paperclip hooked to the top right corner of a document he was actively reviewing. It was his silent marker, unfinished business. When he returned from a meeting, the paperclip sat on the left. No one noticed him stop walking. No one saw the tension ripple through his shoulders as his mind raced through possibilities. Assistants had keys, but none would dare touch his desk. Security logs showed no forced entry. The locks were intact. The cameras in his office were inactive by design, privacy, he'd insisted. Irony tasted bitter on his tongue. That was when his thoughts drifted, reluctantly, to Marina. She worked the night shift, arriving after most employees had gone home. Victor had seen her dozens of times over the years without really seeing her at all. She was always dressed the same, faded blue uniform, hair pulled back tightly, hands rough and red from chemicals. She moved quietly, efficiently, as if she wanted to leave no trace of her presence beyond cleanliness itself. Invisible people were dangerous, Victor knew that. Not because they were malicious, but because they were underestimated. The first time he watched her closely, it was unintentional. He stayed late one evening, seated behind his glass walls, lights dimmed, reviewing contracts. Marina pushed her cart down the hallway, wheels squeaking faintly. She paused outside his office, glanced at the occupied sign, and waited. Patient, still, humming softly under her breath, a tune he didn't recognize. When he finally stepped out, she startled, eyes widening for just a fraction of a second before she lowered her gaze. Sorry, sir, she said quickly. I can come back later. Victor studied her face. There was exhaustion there, yes, but also something else, alertness, perhaps. Awareness. He nodded and walked past her without a word, but the unease followed him home. The next morning, another discrepancy appeared. A confidential memo, one that had not been emailed or printed, lay open to a specific paragraph. Victor felt a chill creep up his spine. This was no accident. This was deliberate. He called security, asked neutral questions, received rehearsed answers. No alarms. No anomalies. No unauthorized access. Too clean. That afternoon, he found Marina cleaning near the executive wing. He stopped in front of her cart, blocking her path. She looked up, surprise flickering across her face before she composed herself. Yes, sir. Do you ever enter my office? He asked, keeping his voice even. Her grip tightened on the mop handle. Only when I'm told to. Usually I skip it. Why? Because you don't like people touching your things. She said it as a statement, not an accusation. Victor blinked. And how would you know that? She hesitated, then shrugged. Everyone knows that. Silence stretched between them. The hallway felt suddenly too quiet, the hum of lights too loud. Victor searched her face for guilt, fear, defiance, anything definitive. He found none of it. I don't touch papers, Marina added softly. I just clean. He nodded, stepped aside, and watched her pass. Rationally, he knew suspicion without proof was useless. Emotionally, the seed had already taken root. Over the next 2 days, Victor tested the environment. He placed objects deliberately, noted their positions, left subtle markers only he would recognize. Each morning, 1 or 2 details shifted just enough to confirm his fears. Someone was inside his office. Someone careful. Someone patient. His thoughts kept circling back to Marina, not because the evidence pointed to her, but because nothing else did. She was there when no one else was. She had access when others didn't. And most importantly, no one would question her presence. A cleaning lady belonged everywhere and nowhere at once. On the third night, Victor stayed late again. He pretended to leave, waited in the parking garage until the building emptied, then returned through a side entrance. From the shadowed hallway, he watched Marina approach his office, cart rattling softly. His pulse quickened. She stopped at the door, checked the sign, and sighed. She turned away, moving on without entering. Victor felt foolish, and somehow more unsettled than before. Back in his office, he made a decision he hated but trusted. He called the head of security and ordered a full review of internal camera footage after hours, including restricted zones. No explanations. No exceptions. As he ended the call, Victor looked around his office, the desk, the drawers, the neatly aligned folders, and felt a strange, unwelcome realization settle in his chest. He wasn't afraid of being stolen from. He was afraid of being watched. The security room was colder than Victor remembered, or perhaps it only felt that way because his skin had gone tight with anticipation. The hum of servers filled the space, a constant mechanical breathing that reminded him uncomfortably of a living thing. A single technician stood up as Victor entered, surprise flickering across his face. "You can go," Victor said, already pulling a chair closer to the monitors. The technician hesitated, then nodded and left, the door clicking shut behind him. Victor was alone now, with nothing but screens and suspicion for company. He selected the timestamp himself, 10:47 p.m. The camera covering the executive corridor flickered, then stabilized. The image was grainy but clear enough. Marina appeared at the far end of the hallway, her cart moving slowly, methodically, as always. Victor leaned forward despite himself, elbows on his knees, eyes narrowed. She stopped outside his office. For a moment, nothing happened. She adjusted her gloves, checked the trash bin, straightened the sign on the door. Victor felt a sharp, irrational disappointment. He told himself it didn't matter. The truth would reveal itself eventually. Then she entered. His jaw tightened. The camera angle switched automatically, showing the interior of his office from the hallway view. Marina moved with practiced efficiency, wiping surfaces, emptying the bin, never lingering longer than necessary. Victor watched her hands closely. They never strayed to the desk drawers. She didn't open a single folder. She didn't even glance at the documents spread neatly across the desk. Minutes passed. Victor exhaled slowly, confused by the absence of guilt he had been so certain he would see. Then Marina paused. She stood in front of the desk, motionless, staring at the framed photograph. Victor felt a strange tightening in his chest. The picture was of Daniel and him at the company's early days, back when they'd both believed loyalty was permanent and success was a shared destination. He had replaced that photo months ago with the graduation picture of his nephew, but the older memory still clung to the frame. Marina reached out with hesitant fingers and turned the frame face down. "Why?" Victor whispered to the empty room. She didn't smile. She didn't look satisfied. Her shoulders slumped, as if the small gesture carried a weight no one else could see. For a moment, she stood there, eyes closed, breathing slowly, like someone bracing for impact. The door opened behind her. Victor straightened so abruptly his chair creaked. Daniel stepped inside the office with the confidence of a man who belonged there. He didn't notice Marina at first. He didn't need to check for cameras. His movements were too smooth, too practiced, as though he had rehearsed them in his head many times. Victor's mouth went dry. Daniel went straight to the desk, bypassing the visible documents, opening the lower drawer Victor rarely used. He pulled out a thin envelope, flipped through it, then took out his phone. He snapped photos quickly, efficiently, his expression calm and almost bored. This wasn't curiosity. This was routine. Marina retreated instinctively, pressing herself against the wall near the door, trying to make herself invisible. Victor felt a flash of shame at the recognition. She had been doing what she always did. Staying unseen to survive. Daniel turned suddenly and noticed her. "What are you still doing here?" he snapped, irritation cutting through his composure. "I clean here," Marina replied, her voice small but steady. "Then clean somewhere else," he said, stepping toward her. His hand brushed her shoulder as he moved past, impatient, dismissive. Victor's fists clenched. He felt a surge of anger that surprised him with its intensity, not just at the betrayal unfolding, but at the casual cruelty of it. Marina didn't move aside. "You shouldn't be here," she said quietly. Daniel laughed under his breath. "You think you can tell me where I can be?" She looked up at him then, really looked at him, and something in her eyes changed. The fear receded, replaced by a clarity that made Victor's breath hitch. I've seen men like you before, Marina said. You always think no one is watching. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. Daniel's smile vanished. I already sent the files, she continued. And the video. Security and the police. For a long second, the room froze. Daniel's face cycled through disbelief, anger, calculation. He lunged forward, but Marina stepped back, holding the phone up like a shield. The door burst open as security guards rushed in, alerted by a silent alarm Victor didn't know existed. Daniel shouted, protested, demanded explanations, but his voice sounded thin and desperate even through the speakers. The footage ended. Victor sat back, stunned, staring at his reflection in the darkened screen. He felt as though he had just watched a version of himself, a man so certain of his instincts that he nearly destroyed the one person who had protected him. The next morning, Marina stood outside his office, hands folded in front of her, eyes lowered. The corridor buzzed with whispers about Daniel's arrest, about corporate espionage, about police cars in the underground garage. Come in, Victor said softly. She hesitated, then stepped inside, stopping just short of the desk. I wanted to say thank you, he began, then stopped. The words felt insufficient, almost insulting. I also wanted to apologize. She looked up, surprised. I suspected you, he admitted. I was wrong. Marina nodded slowly. It's not the first time. There was no bitterness in her voice. Just acceptance. Why did you do it? Victor asked. You could have ignored it. No one would have blamed you. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I lost my son because he trusted the wrong person. I clean offices now because I don't trust people anymore. But I still recognize betrayal when I see it. Victor felt something crack open in his chest. He stood, extended his hand, not as a boss, but as a man. From now on, he said, you don't work nights anymore. And your job description is changing. Marina looked at his hand, then at his face, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. I don't need a title, she said gently. Victor shook his head. No, but I need someone I can trust. For the first time since the company had begun to fracture under hidden pressure, Victor felt a strange, unfamiliar sensation settle over him. Relief. And the quiet knowledge that true loyalty often came from the people no one bothered to see.